Welcome to the Insurance Suits podcast, brought to you by AAIMCo, the American Association of Insurance Management Consultants. I am Chantal Roberts.
Hey, Chantal, I'm Amy Johnson.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Oh, good.
What's
Thank
new?
you. Well, we are getting into spring now, and
Yes, we are.
I'm looking forward to the warmer weather. I'm not a cold girl. I think we've talked about this before. I am not a cold season person at all. Welcome to the Insurance Suits podcast, a bi-monthly podcast brought to you by AAIMCo, discussing the issues and the people who are involved in insurance. The views expressed by the moderators and guests represent their own views and opinions, and not necessarily the views and opinions of AAIMCo, Insurance Suits, or its advertisers.
No, I'm not either. I grew up in Minnesota, and maybe I mentioned this before, but everyone always says to me, "You're a Minnesota girl.
Should be used to it."
You should be used to it." You never get used to it.
No, yeah, because
Just an FYI.
I'm from Arkansas, so I'm used to spring starting in like February. And in
Yeah.
February up here in Kansas, it's like still snowing and everything. And I'm sitting there going, when's it gonna be spring? Oh,
Well, Februarys are always the most difficult month. Have read articles where it's the month with the least amount of sun in the Midwest.
Yeah, I do think that.
Really.
I do think that. And what we should probably be thinking about is, transitioning into our summer or our spring mode. Like maybe this is when we want to go on vacation to an island somewhere, or start all over again, or what have you. But let me ask you this, since we're talking about transitions. You used to be I guess a lawyer, and then you transitioned into being a claims manager, and then you transitioned back into being a lawyer, and now you're kind of transitioning into an expert witness. And I think not necessarily the lawyer, all of that aspect, but I think that's what a lot of our expert witnesses and consultants have done, is like this is almost like their third career.
Right.
And you and I are, and I think Scott, actually, we may have talked to Scott about this after, like off record or whatever, but we had talked about, we're not old by any, I'm Generation X, but this is almost like my third career. And so you do have to have that experience, like 20 years ish experience, but so you can't be a spring chicken to be an expert. But anyway, so what about you transitioning wise? How did you get into it and stuff?
Well, it's so interesting because, when I started out, I knew before I was even licensed that I wanted to do insurance coverage work, which is odd, but I did, and I loved it and wanted to keep doing it. So I did. I litigated insurance coverage and specialized in bad faith, primarily on the general liability side. And after about 7 years, I had an amazing opportunity to go in-house, and I had the title of Director of Property and Casualty Claims and Assistant Claim Counsel. And I did that for almost 15 years before returning to private practice. And I'll tell you what, Rick Hammond, who is also a member of AAIMCo,
yes,
we should get him on.
We should.
So I've known Rick for like 20 plus years, and he has kind of been instrumental in every phase, which is it wasn't intentional, but you maintain contacts and you get mutual respect for someone. And when they call you and want to talk about, a defining chapter in my life, which is what I did with Rick, he'll give some guidance or some thoughts. And so it's funny because when I was returning to private practice, I was talking to Rick about, where I wanted to go and what firm, and he was in private practice doing some expert consulting stuff as part of it. And he was instrumental in getting me to Hepler Broom, which is where I'm currently at. So I've been back in private practice about 5 years now. And so for the first time, I actually wasn't trying to be an associate for Rick, which 20 years before I had interviewed with him. I was a client of his when I was in house, and then I had an opportunity to be a partner with him at Hepler Broom, which is what I did. And so during that time, I started looking into some consulting and some expert work, and Rick did some of that. Now Rick has retired from the practice, but he's got a booming expert and consulting practice, and he's in the Chicago area. And I talk to him frequently. And as he started transitioning more and more into the expert and consulting, I really started to get into it too. And I'll tell you, I absolutely love it. I love practicing law. I'm not the hugest fan of trying cases, but I'll do it. And I've done it. So I like that I have that. But I love the expert work and consulting. And there've been a couple times in the last 2-3 years where I've actually done consulting behind the scenes. One was for an underlying tort plaintiff attorney. One dealing with a GL claim, and the defendant's carrier denied coverage and filed a deck action. And no one was really paying attention to it. And he didn't totally know what to do. So he reached out to me, and I kind of helped navigate him through the process as a consultant in how to read the coverage, make some coverage arguments, and help guide him through it. It was amazing. I had so much fun doing it. And so the expert in consulting has been a large part of my practice now. And I'm having a blast. But what about you? Because you've got a good business.
I would say, though, coupling on what you have talked about, is I do enjoy the consulting aspect of it. I wish, though, that more attorneys, and I am going to throw and I'll probably regret this later because I know we're being recorded and people are going to listen to it, but I'll stand up and say it. I will throw defense counsel under the bus. As much as I love defense counsel, they tend, our insurance side aspect of it, they tend to wait until the last minute and to retain a consultant or an expert. And I believe very, very firmly, not only because it just enriches my pocketbook when they hire me, but I believe very firmly, I'm like, God, man, if y'all would have hired me about 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, I could have told you XYZ. And I know that insurers are looking at the bottom line. They want to conserve loss adjustment expense, which litigation expense is part of, which your and my invoices are part of when we are hired by the defense or by the insurance company to look to either to counsel them, as a consultant, or to review the policy as either a rebuttal expert or as the main expert in situations regarding bad faith. But if we could get retained, I would sit there and go, did you think about asking about XYZ? Did you think about asking, ABC? And I find that the trial bar is much more open to that. I have I can count at least 5 cases where I have been retained and I haven't been declared yet. It's like a state case or something to that effect. I haven't written a report, but they keep sending me stuff going, read this. What else should I be looking for? What else should I be asking about? And, I enjoy those. It's like you don't enjoy the
Right.
trial aspect. I think I don't enjoy. I enjoy the expert work. Don't get me wrong. Because I like reading the files. I don't mind writing the reports. It's the depositions. Those are hard.
I was going to say, I don't think you're a fan of the depositions.
I am
They're
not a
tough.
fan. I am not a fan of the depositions. And again, I realize that we're recording, but you know what? I recognize that if I get involved in a big case, some poor little junior attorney is going to have to go through slog through all of these podcasts and everything to listen to it and see if I've said something. This episode of Insurance Suits is sponsored by the American Association of Insurance Management Consultants, or AAIMCo, a nonprofit trade association comprised of insurance and risk professionals ranging from actuarial, underwriting, acquisition and transactions, and adjuster, agent, and broker standards of care. Find out more at www.AAIMCo.com. Yeah, I'm not a fan of the deposition, and it's mostly because I feel like I can't get some good feedback in regards to did I do okay? Did I not do okay? Yeah, I mean, like, I just can't get my mind wrapped around it. Yeah.
Right. Well, and I think your point is well taken on retaining an expert or consultant early. You know, policyholder attorneys and on my expert work, my work is split about 50-50 between carrier and policyholder. So, I can evaluate on both sides and have opinions on what's reasonable conduct. And policyholder attorneys are definitely, I see a lot more sophistication and specialization with a lot of policyholder lawyers. However, I have seen, not just in expert work that I do, but even as a lawyer, there might be times it would be nice as an expert if you're retained during the discovery process, the fact discovery, because a policyholder lawyer who doesn't do a lot of it may not realize that they don't have a complete set of the claim notes, or they may not have thought to subpoena the third-party administrator's file because they thought it was all included in the claim file. I mean, there's a lot of different scenarios, but I would see that and be able to say, something's missing here. I'm not seeing this, this, and this. And it gives them time while fact discovery is still open to be able to request that information or issue subpoenas. So that's one reason why I think it's important. Another reason why is just on a practical level. There are really good experts and consultants out there. There are some mediocre experts and consultants out there. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say some underqualified experts and consultants out there. The stellar consultants, if you're able and willing to pay, the rate, because sometimes you do get what you pay for, but yes, to get a stellar expert and consultant, it is going to be challenging to do that if you're calling 2 weeks before a report is due or a month before a report is due, because experts really have to excel at time management, and yes, good experts who are going to continue to get files in will have no problem saying, I'm at capacity right now.
Absolutely.
And so to do that early enough where that stellar consultant or expert can say, oh, 6 months? Yeah, I could do that. Send me the file. Let's do it. They're not going to do it with a month or a 2-week lead time.
And this is a good point. And it goes back to, again, I think it's defense. I'm going to call out defense, because on the insurance side, and I know I'm guilty of it too, when I was a claims adjuster handling lawsuits and everything, you don't want to spend that money, because you sit there and you think, we've got defense counsel, they handle nothing but defense work, so they understand how the insurance policy goes. And our 36B witness is going to be, so and so, they know how insurance goes. And then our other expert, or quote unquote expert, is going to be the claims adjuster. Oftentimes I have seen that, had we been, like, we as outside consultants and outside experts, been called in earlier, those guys are unable to see the trees because of the forest, so to speak. They're so focused on defense that they don't see this gaping hole that, oh geez, y'all probably should have settled this way back when, or this is what they're focusing on, or this is the smoking gun that they see. But also you are absolutely right. Like, if you know that the other side is going to be having an expert, contact us earlier, because I have just recently been contacted by a defense counsel, with a 2-week lead time. And I took pity on him, because two experts in AAIMCo had already turned him down, bless his heart. And so both of them had recommended me, and I'm like, oh, sure, and I didn't want to be that third person. And I'm like, I'm kind of full right now, but it's like, I feel really bad for you, so I'm going to take pity, and try to work it in. And I'm going to be working this weekend, basically, is what the deal is. CMR Consulting proudly sponsors the video recording of insurance suits. You now have a choice of watching or listening to the podcast. Go to YouTube and search for Chantal Roberts or CMR Consulting.
And I've had it where counsel has called me, and the timing was right, because 2 cases of mine just settled.
Yes.
And I had capacity to take it on. That wouldn't have even been an issue had I been called 3 or 4 months ago, or even a month earlier than that. But I was able to say, send it over. I want to help you out. This seems like the right thing to do. But in part, that's because I had a couple of cases settled. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to do it.
Yeah, and you do have to be able to look at your capacity too, because I know that I've turned away cases before where I'm like, oh gosh, no, I'm not, I'm full. And I think I gave those attorneys your name and number, saying, you need to contact Amy. She's still in this region. She's in Chicago. Because I know that attorneys, both plaintiff or policyholder and defense, look for local experts, so you're not having to travel a lot and have those extra expenses and everything.
Yeah, although most of my expert retentions recently have been, I think, Montana, California, Alabama, one in Florida. And it is, with the way files can get sent now, much easier. And while I'm at a firm, so I have resources, and I don't have to cover my own overhead specifically as a small business.
Yeah. Well, that
I'm able to kind of get things organized and whatever, but I keep an electronic file. I try not to do a lot of paper. And so I'm getting used to that component of it. And it makes it much easier. And that, frankly, supports getting someone sooner rather than later, because even though it's easier to communicate in this day and age than 10 years ago, I can always jump on a call with Zoom and talk to counsel about an issue that I see. But that gives me the ability to bring up issues. It shouldn't give an excuse why you waited a long time.
And that brings up a really good point of the fact that as a solo practitioner, as an expert witness, and I think it would be even harder for you as an attorney, is that sometimes we don't have people to look over our reports, like we would if I was a claims adjuster, if you are acting as an attorney. So we have to know as experts where the line is of where our sandbox is, basically, like what we can opine on and what we can't
Right.
opine on. Because I know, for example, I had a couple of months back had part of my report thrown out because the judge felt like I was opining on a legal issue. Now, I don't feel like I was. I just think that attorneys get their knickers all up in a knot, but that's just me. Bygones. Not that I'm bitter. But I think it would be even harder for you as an attorney to take off that attorney hat when you're working as an expert.
Well, yeah, a lot of times on the bad faith stuff, I have to pull myself out of the coverage analysis because it's not my role, it's not my lane of traffic, and it's not something that I can opine on. And so while I feel it's important to have that in as context and as a backdrop in my report or my opinions, it's not my role to opine on coverage. So, but it is hard for me to pull myself out of it and look at it in terms of, okay, the only reason why I'm here is primarily because the carrier lost the coverage dispute, even though it hasn't been lost yet, because if the carrier wins the coverage dispute, it's pretty much going to take care of the bad faith case,
Right,
for the most part. So I have to kind of go into it with an eye towards the coverage issues have already been decided. Now, was the conduct reasonable while that investigation in the claim took place? That's what I'm supposed to be opining on in the bad faith area, not whether it was bad faith or not bad faith.
right.
Really,
That's
it's
purview of a
coverage, but
jury.
was their conduct, was the carrier's conduct within the reasonable scope and custom and practice in the industry? And so sometimes I need to keep redirecting myself to that. Otherwise, I could stay in that coverage analysis because that's what I do so much as a lawyer. I could stay in that coverage analysis for a long time, and I have to keep pulling myself out of it.
You know, we mentioned Rick Hammond, who is a member of AAIMCo, and I think we should have him on next because you had mentioned how he kind of mentored you, and I think he brings everybody along. I really like
Yes.
him as well. So I say let's both get off our soapboxes and let's bring
Yeah,
Rick
let's get
on.
Rick on.
So
Rick's amazing.
I really like him. I sat next to him at a meeting and he was just spilling little nuggets of wisdom into my ear and everything, and it was great. It was fantastic.
Well, and the thing I like about Rick is Rick is a big picture guy.
Yes.
He'll know details, but there's been so many times over the years, even we tried a case together in February of 19 in federal court, Toledo. And I get into the weeds. I don't usually get lost in them, but I get into them. And he always asks the question, okay, let's ask ourselves, so what? What's the big picture here? The big picture is this, maybe that's not so important. And I always remember as I start getting into those weeds, what's the big picture? What's the overall goal? Now, Rick, maybe you'll hear it in when we talk to him, but the thing everybody at the firm loved about Rick, he's got the best laugh on the planet.
Oh, I hope it lasts then.
Sitting down the hall from him for a few years, I don't know, could get a little tiring, but he really does. He's got a great personality. He's got decades of experience and regulatory experience. I say we get him on here next
Okay.
and let's talk to him about how he manages his practice after having been in the industry for 30 years and doing it now.
Okay, so done. So I'm going to say we're done. This is an insurance suits podcast. Boom, we're finished. I'm Chantal Roberts.
I'm in.
And
I am Amy Johnson.
Great. We're going to be back in 2 weeks. We're going to bring Rick Hammond with us. So please like, follow, subscribe to our podcast on your favorite distribution channel and give us a review, preferably a 5-star one. If you need some insurance consultants or expert witnesses, I think we've all learned, get it to us fast, and go to AAIMCo, www.AAIMCo.com. Or if you are a consultant or an expert witness, you know what? Join us. We would love to have you. So we're going to see you in like 2
love it.
weeks. See ya.
Awesome. Have a good day.